Welcome, welcome, welcome. Episode 2 of the Unwashed Asses, recorded Thursday, January 12th, 2017. So, last episode I said I didn't know how to get everything configured as far as actually doing a podcast, setting up an RSS feed, and then publishing to different platforms. Oh, surprise, I figured it out, and it was easier than I it was easier. There were some tricks and quirks as far as getting in to the different services and submitting there, but once the RSS feed was created, it was easy enough to do, except for Apple does not make it clear at all about where to submit to iTunes. It was bullshit. Whereas Google, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, they all made it super easy as far as, oh yeah, just plug it in here, and then boom, away we were. So, if you're listening to this one on the YouTube or SoundCloud feeds, just remember you could now get it on those 4 different services: Audacity, not Audacity, it's what I'm using to record it, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and Pocket Cast. If there are any other platforms you want it on, please write in, let me know, and I will go ahead and get them submitted there. Just remember, theunwashedasses@gmail.com, theunwashedasses@gmail.com, and I will go ahead and get them submitted there. But otherwise, today, what are we talking about? I didn't actually prep any show notes, which is a big no-no in my book. It's something I should have taken care of. But I was having a really hard time thinking of different topics that I wanted to cover today. I eventually did settle that we're going to talk about strippers, Portal, and network security. So there's going to be a little bit of variance as far as, well, I don't necessarily care about the strippers, but I'm sure as shit interested in network security. It's just things that have popped up recently. The strippers not so much, but we'll kind of ease into the subjects here. So, Portal was a game that came out, the original one, 2007, so a decade ago, and the internet lost its collective mind. It just fucking fell in love with this game, started spamming the memes as far as, cake is a lie, all that BS. Jonathan Coulton, you couldn't get away from the fucker and his cover of Still Alive. So it was the same thing that happened with Skyrim, where the internet, Skyrim, Fallout, essentially if there's a big game that comes out and it's, really good, the internet falls in love with it, and sites like Imgur, Reddit, really any social gathering space online will just flip out and talk about it incessantly. And that has a way of turning me off to the game itself, where then I will actively go out of my way to avoid it just because I'm being inundated with it in other areas. It's being thrown in my face 24/7, so I don't actually go to the source, I just ignore it. So in the case of Portal, that was my initial reaction to it, like, god damn it, how good can this be? Why do you just shut up about it? I don't care now. Fast forward a couple years, I still hadn't played it, and ended up meeting somebody who was absolutely infatuated with the series itself. And by this point, I had already acquired Portal 1 and 2 through, I want to say it was Humble Bundle deals. Either way, I did have the games in my Steam library. And they were just, this person was, it was their favorite game. There was no getting around it. That's what they wanted. Like, if they had a choice, they would play Portal 2, that and, World of Warcraft. But I decided, enough times passed. Portal 2 came out in 2012. This was around 2013, 2014. And they had never been able to play the Portal 2 multiplayer campaign with anybody, and I finally found somebody that I was like, okay, you're worth it. I'll give this a shot. We'll go through and we'll play Portal together. And it was everything, not everything that everybody said it was. It was a really good game. It was the way Portal 2's multiplayer worked was you essentially controlled different halves of the portal gun. You had Atlas and Peabody. There were two different robots. One person had the blue portal gun, the other one had the orange one, and you had to go through and collectively work on these puzzles and then reach the end. And there was a little bit of a difficulty spike as far as I imagine that if you had ever played Portal before, the multiplayer expected this of you before going into it. Like, okay, if you're playing this, then you should have played the single player components already. So you should be familiar with the concepts of how it all works. And myself, I really wasn't. I had played, like, I don't know, I hadn't even really got out of the testing facilities within Portal 1. I only got to, like, Chamber 15 or something up to that point. I was just fucking around, didn't really care. So the physics-based puzzle solving wasn't really clicking with me, but it helped having a physicist with me as we played the game together. So over the course of days, maybe even weeks, we ended up beating the campaign, and it was good. And then things went sour with that relationship, and I started hating Portal again. It's like, it's a not unique phenomenon, it's just interesting phenomena when you're in a relationship with somebody and they have one thing that they were really passionate about. It's what they loved, and it was a part of them. And so when that relationship sours, well, you may have liked that one thing, but now that one thing has soured for you as well. So that's what happened to Portal. I just immediately started despising it once again, and it wasn't exactly hard to fall back into that. So fast forward to 2017 now, and I'm playing Portal again for what feels like the first time. I've hit a point where streaming or just playing games in general, it's getting boring. I've been playing a lot of like Overwatch and Destiny, and it's essentially the same stuff over and over again. Aside from like the holiday events, I'm not really getting anything additional out of it. You know, like Overwatch is fun, but it's not something I can play over and over again. And Destiny, I've hit the cap as far as what I can do in the game itself. So until they release new content, I'm just going over the same stuff. And when you've played the same 5 strikes ad nauseum, and you need a dedicated group to run the harder version of the raid you've already beaten several times, it's you know, there's not much to it. I'm looking at the games themselves, like Titanfall 2, I already beat the single player component in that, and multiplayer it's fallen into the same pit as the others, where it's fun, but it's not something I can do repeatedly. So we have the Games with Gold series where you get essentially 4 free games a month through Xbox as long as you are a Xbox Live Gold member. So this past beginning of January, we had The Cave and Death Trap World of Van Helsing, I think it's called. So Death Trap, it doesn't have a story whatsoever, and it is more focused on just it's a tower defense game. It's fun. But The Cave is a purely single-player experience. And I found out that's what I had been missing. Multiplayer is fun, but it's repetitive. It's meant to be, you know, fast-paced, get you in, get you out, and then on to the next match, and you just rinse and repeat, with the reward system getting, you know, progressively longer, and it just keeps stringing you along. So getting back to just a purely narrative-driven piece like The Cave reinvigorated the gaming for me, much like Bayonetta did years ago when I was getting just bled out on first-person shooters, kind of like I am now. So having something harkening back to the older style of games where you're just going through, it's a platformer, you're solving puzzles, you're experiencing this story. I beat the game within a couple days because I was hooked. It was something different. It was something new. And fast forward to me then getting curious about wanting to do different things with the Zero Lives stream, where playing on the Xbox is all well and fun, but you can only watch me play the same game so many different times, and there's a lot of real. I mean, not to brag, but I have a really good library in Steam itself. So I wanted to see how well I would be able to set up a stream like that, where the setup I have right now, I'm running on a Lenovo Yoga Pro 2. It doesn't have dedicated graphics. It just has the Intel HD 4600. It's got a Core i7. I think it's like a Skylake processor, 8 gigs of RAM, and then the SSD. So it can handle some games, but throwing the task of playing a game and then processing a stream, uploading that, it's a lot for it. Now, if I had a dedicated gaming machine that could run the game and then just use the Yoga as a video processor, as far as dedicated to hosting the stream itself, be great. It's what I do for the Xbox, and it works out well, aside from I just need more USB 3.0 ports. Which reminds me, hitting up Amazon today for that. So, I looked at the selection of games I had, and Portal jumped out to me, and it is an old enough game that it runs really well on the laptop, and I remember even on my old desktop, which was a giant piece of shit, it would run well enough, and I could actually record using Fraps, edit the videos, and then upload. So fired up Portal and went through the settings, tinkering around with it, and found kind of a little sweet spot where everything's set to medium. If I locked in the frame rate at 30 frames per second within OBS, it started handling well, and I could play through the game. So, ignoring the Zero Lives segment of it, I just started streaming Portal, and I was enjoying myself, because even though I had tried like the first third of the game a few times over, it was just that. I wasn't competing against other people. It was a narrative-driven piece. There were puzzles, and I was in my own little immersive world. And, I mean, we can't ignore that the writing for Portal is top-notch. Its comedic value is very, very high. But I noticed then as I was streaming it, I was getting viewers. And I've said time and again that I don't do the streams or shows necessarily for other people. I don't do it expecting to gain a huge following or an audience, much like I don't expect that with the Unwashed Asses. I do it because I enjoy it. It's something that I can focus on, and I can better my abilities as far as production is concerned, and I get benefit out of it several different ways. So that being said, being able to see people come into the chat room and actually talk with myself and one another was refreshing. It was enjoyable. I liked seeing that type of interaction. It got me excited. So I'm like, well, fuck it, let's keep this going. We'll go ahead and we'll finish streaming Portal. And so episode 1 was finished, and then episode 2, same thing. We got some viewers, people were watching, people were talking to one another. I was getting subscribers on Twitch, and it felt rewarding. Like, you've put a lot of work and effort into this, and you got 2 new followers out. Oh, it's worth it, It's what I've been after. So Portal 1 was finished. Twitch decided to take a shit on itself, and their export was broken. So Had to wait on that one, and then was forced into doing things the old way as far as because the stream itself had been broken up so much and there was a lot of errors with it. I had to export like 5 different segments for at least the second episode, download them, edit it all back together, and then re-upload. And it was just so time consuming. I remember having to do that before because I didn't have the capability to really stream well, so I had to record, edit, then upload. And even with my internet connection, which is fairly decent, it took forever to get it uploaded. And I'm so glad that I was able to change the setup to what I have now, to gain that knowledge as far as how to get everything configured, so I don't have to go through that process. I'm not as delayed. Where, as I had to leave my computer on for at least a solid day straight just for rendering the video and then getting it uploaded, which was ridiculous. Whereas with the system I have now, I can just stream it, export it. I do everything live, so I don't have to go back and edit, and it works. But Portal 1 then, with the gameplay, because I had been essentially gotten the crash course with the Portal 2 multiplayer, it all came back to me fairly quickly as far as how the systems work. So playing the game itself, once you get out of the test chambers and then, spoilers, you get behind the scenes and you're working your way towards GLaDOS. GLaDOS, yeah. The game gets almost frustratingly easy. It's like you prepped me, you built me up for all this, and now I'm just flying through these puzzles as you throw them at me. I'm not hitting that same perplexing state where it's like, well, shit, let me stop and figure out how this all works and then kind of work my way through. So the second half of Portal 2 actually flew by, and I think within 3 hours I'd beaten the entire game. Now, not to say I didn't enjoy it, it was just a little disappointing, like especially the final quote-unquote boss fight with GLaDOS. It was ridiculously easy because by then all of the mechanics as far as what they want you to do and being able to recognize what they want you to do were just second nature. So within minutes, I mean, you only have 5 minutes to beat the fight anyways, but it was more the amount of time it actually took to do the actions rather than trying to figure it out. So that was disappointing. I think the fact that how good the writing was and the interaction with GLaDOS, it more than made up for it. I definitely enjoyed it. And then the ending happens, and you get out of the facility, and you find out that Shell has assumed the party position and is being dragged back into the facility. Now, if I had to wait 5 years from 2007 to 2012 for the sequel, I can see how people would have been rusty and had a hard time getting into it. But being able just to okay, Portal 1's done, let's fire up Portal 2, badoop. And I ran into the same issue where this is easy. The solutions to the puzzles were obvious enough. Now they did introduce new mechanics, but these were mechanics I had already played because of the multiplayer section. So by playing things in a very backwards order, I think it's making the game easier. Now, not to say that I'm not hitting those moments where I have to stop and you can go back and watch the feeds, but I'm scratching my head a lot, and it's fun in the sense that now that I'm streaming them and I have people watching it, I start hitting that little panic mode where it's like, oh god, everybody's going to think I'm a dumbass for not seeing this clearly obvious solution. Why aren't you doing this faster? Go, go, go. And then on the flip side, if I'm figuring things out too quickly, it's like, well, you must have clearly looked this up, or you're somehow not being honest with us, and now you're just looking like a total asshole because you're going through it too quickly. There's no winning in my mind regarding that. So I don't know, but I'm having a good time with it. did the Zero Lives stream this morning. We continued up from where I left off last night in Portal 2, where you know enough time's passed. Screw your spoilers. I have every right here. Where we got rid of GLaDOS, attached her to a potato, put Wheatley in control, and he went ahead and stabbed me in the back. And now we just have been introduced to the Cave Johnson character with Caroline, who I believe is going to turn into GLaDOS. The voice is too similar. And we're trying to get into the old testing facilities. Now, that's kind of the fun bit, is that I didn't care enough at all about Portal to really expose myself to spoilers or what was really going on with the story. So it's all very new and fresh to me. And it's predictable in a way because of just how the pacing is and the writing, but it's very enjoyable. It's definitely one of my favorite game series now. But you get to see that reaction now because everybody that's come into the stream has already beaten the game, and so they know what's happening. They have a good idea of how the puzzles are supposed to be completed, but it's kind of like I've been trapped inside of a time capsule, and they now get to see somebody else go through and experience for the first time, which I'm really enjoying. So I don't know how far I am into Portal itself, Portal 2 I should say, with the rest of the game. If it's anything like the multiplayer, I probably have about 40% of the game left now that I've hit the old testing facility, because we then have to work our way back up to the new one and then depose Wheatley. Don't know what's going to happen with GLaDOS, but then we can wrap it up. Which sucks though, because now I realize we're probably never going to see a Portal 3 because Valve doesn't do 3s for whatever fucking reason. We're never going to get, Half-Life 3, Team Fortress 3, Left 4 Dead 3, Portal 3. It's all just going to fade out. But you know what? As long as they wrap up the story well enough, I don't care. That's all that I really care about in my games themselves is story. How well is it presented? How well is it told? Am I able to get myself immersed into it? So that's the plan. We're gonna keep doing the Zero Lives with single player components, and I really have to be thankful that games like The Cave and Portal have come back into my attention in a way that now I'm reinvigorated. I enjoy gaming again. Alright, so have acquired the USB hub, which picked up the Anchor 7-port USB 3.0 charging hub. So it has the same number of ports my current USB 2.0 hub offers, as well as charging capability. So I can plug my phone in while I'm doing my stuff, and then hopefully that improves the performance of the Elgato, and the Xbox streams will get a bit better then. Added on another stylus because I managed to lose mine, and whole thing supports Child's Play through Amazon Smile. Yeah, okay. So I get some rewards, I feel a little good about myself, and nobody cares but me. So there's a rite of passage when it comes to guys, as far as sex is the primary thing that we think about from ages 11, 12 till we die. It's our driving force. And part of that process is the introduction of strip clubs. Now, up until the time I hit 18, it was definitely a keen interest of mine as far as I can go to this place, there are naked women there, and I can experience this. It must be amazing. And at that point, my game isn't necessarily even strong enough to, like, I can get a girlfriend. That's about it. We'll go out for a couple months or do bowling at the movies, or we'll get some fast food, and that's about it. You don't really do much more at that age. There were simpler times. We didn't have 16 and pregnant, and coming from not necessarily ultra conservative, but the fucking Midwest. There's nothing going on out here. You don't have those same types of issues. They're very rare outliers, if anything else. So things progress at a much slower rate, where if you're even getting laid at all in high school, it's a very rare thing at that as well. So strip clubs were kind of the penultimate thing, especially in high school, as far as that's what you're looking forward to. You're gonna turn 18. You're still might even be in high school, or you're going off to college, because a lot of the clubs around here are non-alcoholic, so you can get in at 18. You don't have to be 21. Now, I had always wanted to go to one, and this is essentially the story of how I went to my first and last strip club and why I detest them now. I was 18, and at my school you had 2 days that you could effectively burn up that got you out of school and allowed you to go visit the college of your choice, to go on the tour, do necessary paperwork to get signed up, so on and so forth. They were college days, as they were called. So I had decided that I wanted to go to Columbia College Chicago, because at that time I was still naive and thought, well, I like drawing, and if I'm not going to be a comic book artist, I should apply my skills towards something not legitimate, but more realistic. So I settled on graphic design. And Columbia College Chicago was a art school located primarily in the loop of the city, and it didn't have anything as far as it was open admittance. You just apply, you got accepted, you applied for your FAFSA, your Sally Mae, what have you, and you got in. And so I had an uncle at the time who was living in Chicago up near Wrigley Field, and I had decided that St. Patrick's Day, I was going to burn up my college day and go up to the school. And I don't even remember, it must have been like a weekend day, or a Friday or something. It had to be a Friday. That I was going to go up, spend the day with my uncle, go to the college, get enrolled, do all of that. And it was St. Patrick's Day. It was a Friday night, we're going to have some fun. And so I drive up. I don't remember a whole lot of the actual day itself. That beyond, we went to the school, I was just blown away because I hadn't spent much time in Chicago prior to this. So walking around downtown, seeing the skyscrapers and all the sights was really something. And the way the college presented everything, having it in this big ballroom, being able to walk around to the different classes and hear lectures and see how they do things, I was enthralled. I fell in love with it, and I ended up going there. Now, it was after that long day of walking around that we were driving back to my uncle's apartment, and we're passing by the Riviera. It was... Admittedly, I didn't know much about music back then. I didn't really care for it. There were only a couple bands that I listened to, and it was maybe a song or two at that. So we're driving by, and we see at the Riviera that Flogging Molly is playing a show there for St. Patrick's Day. Now, anybody who's heard of the band knows they're straight off the boat Irish folks who put on a really, really good show. I didn't know this at the time. And I didn't have anything to do because it was, Friday night going on Saturday. And I say to my uncle, what do you say we stop and see the show? I had no idea what was going to go on inside. I didn't know what it was going to be like. And he's like, yeah, sure. So it was at this time that I had been working a lot of after school hours and had the money to burn. So I went ahead and, sprung for the tickets. And we go in, and the only concert I had been to prior to this one was, again, with my uncle. He had taken me to a Kiss concert when I was like 10 or 11, and I'd lost my mind at that. It was such a good time where it was some arena, and the way we were sitting was, if you're looking at the stage, we were up on the balcony to the left, so that second elevated tier there. And we were very close to the speakers, where I was pretty much deaf for the next couple days. And I had an oversized Kiss t-shirt, and I had the tour book, and there were people spilling beer on me from behind, and I was just singing along. It was fun. Now, give you a little more context, up to that point, I had grown up with my dad being very much into what is now considered classic rock. He was definitely a huge Kiss fan, so I was very familiar with their work, and even had watched the Phantom of the Park, terrible fucking movie they had put out ages ago. So I was definitely down, had a great time. Now, that was my only concert experience prior to going to see Flogging Molly. Now, the Flogging Molly show on itself can get a little raucous, but you do it on St. Patrick's Day night in Chicago, and this is the first time that I had been exposed to a pit. I was 18, a scrawny little shit. My uncle is a giant iron worker, and at this show, they are serving alcohol. So he is well on his way to, we're going to get all kinds of fucked up. Now, it was at this time that I also get my first experience with girls, as far as random stranger just starts grinding on me. It's kind of like an awkward dance between the two of us, where we're working our way towards one another slowly, not overtly showing any interest. But within 20 minutes, she's grinding her ass up onto my crotch. And I'm 18. I don't know what to make of this. That was my focus for the rest of the evening. Not the pit, not the music, not what's going on. That's all enjoyable, whatever. But the fact that I have this gorgeous girl, I remember her as gorgeous. I don't know if she was actually gorgeous, but just working up onto me. And so I'm losing my mind at this. Show ends. My uncle at this point has had more beers than I can count. And the girl says to me, hey, my friends and I are going to X, Y, and Z bar. You should come meet us. And I didn't have the heart to tell her, like, I'm only 18. I can't get into the bar. So, like, okay, sure. Let me go talk to this guy, and we'll meet you there. Just stay right here. I go rush, try to find my uncle. I'm like, Zach, I met this amazing girl. I think this might be something that could happen here. We have to go to this bar, but I'm not 21. What are we gonna do? He's fine, fuck it, whatever. We'll figure it out. Let's go. And I lost her. I turn around and she's gone. She's nowhere to be found. And I was heartbroken. Poor young simpleton Christian had met this amazing girl who was so very willing to at least grind her ass onto him that he was smitten. So I can't remember the name of the bar that she was going to now, and then I couldn't even remember it. And we're working our way out of the auditorium. The show's over, and I remember that you had to funnel through the main entrance, which we were on the second floor, so you had to go downstairs and get out. However, there was also an alley door that was open to help ventilate things. And my uncle's like, oh, we'll just go out the alley, fuck this line. Try to go out the alley, and security starts yelling at us, no, that's not the way to go. Now, my uncle and his drunken reasoning, I don't want to paint him in a bad picture, because it was fun, nothing bad happened the entire night, but he's already a very confident person, and I think he might be under the belief that alcohol only adds to said charisma and confidence and allows him to persuade people. As you're going to find out, that's not such the case here, where there were several minutes of arguing, a lot of angry pointed fingers, and eventually, no, we're going through the front entrance. So we're outside, and the parking lot itself, I want to say, was across from the venue. There's a lot of people walking around. It's Friday night, St. Patrick's Day, and it's at this point my uncle decides, well, nope, he's got to take a piss. He has to relieve himself, and we're not gonna go look for like a CVS or go back inside. Just, Christian, keep an eye out for me. I'm gonna take a piss on the truck. No, again, I'm young, I'm naive. Nowadays, probably wouldn't give a shit, but I'm panicking, telling him, no, you can't do that, it's not allowed, what if somebody sees you? And so I'm freaking out while he's just like, no, fuck it, I'm gonna do my business, keep an eye, let me know if anybody's coming. And much as you'd expect and much as I realize now, nothing happened of it. He took a piss on his truck. Big fucking deal. So because the love of my 18-year-old life had left me at this point, I began needling my uncle, saying, let's go to a strip club. I'm old enough. There's got to be one that's 18 plus around here. Let's go to a strip club. And he's like, no, we're not going to go to a strip club. Your mom's going to kill me. Let's go, we'll get you back to my place, and we're not going to go to a strip club. And admittedly, if I want to, I can play a very good devil's advocate and usually get what I want. And at this point in my 18-year-old life, especially after having made contact with a very promiscuous woman, I wanted to go see more naked ladies. And so we're driving through the city, and it's like, strip club, strip club, strip club. Come on, let's go to the strip club. And eventually, probably not due to any of my persuasive ability, but more the fact that he was already 3 sheets into the wind. Fuck it, let's go to a strip club. Hallelujah. Light shone down from on high. You could hear the choir of angels sing, Christians go to a strip club. So he heads over to the Admiral, which is an 18 plus non-alcoholic strip club that is fully nude. Now, my uncle's driving at the time because I don't have much experience driving in cities at this point. 9 months later, yes, I have plenty of experience driving in cities. Now, we pull up to the curb, but the parking job itself isn't all that spectacular. It's supposed to be parallel park, and he's just kind of angled into it. Now, it's not angled so much that the ass end of the truck is sticking out and causing problems for other people, more so that it's just kind of, it's off kilter. It's something that you don't have to correct, but you feel kind of like an asshole if you don't. So yes, we're going to go ahead correct that. But it's only after we get out of that truck that he realizes, oh, the parking job's kind of shit. Like, we should fix that. But rather than get inside of the truck and then, do the herky jerk back and forth until everything's settled, it's like, no, Christian, grab the rear bumper. We're going to lift it, and we're going to drag the ass end of the truck into the parking spot. Now, he's a very strong guy. I'll give him that. But there's no way that a big strong guy and a scrawny 18-year-old are going to be able to lift up the back end of a Chevy S10, truffle shuffle it over a bit, and then drop it into the parking spot. But Nevertheless, I played the dutiful nephew and grabbed the ass into this truck and tried to help him move it. Some grunting, maybe a blow no ring, and 30 seconds later, fuck it, it's fine where it's at. Okay, now you're talking my language. I can see the strip club. I'm super excited. And we're walking up to the door, and Zach says to me, Christian, strippers love hats. He's got this big red baseball cap on. Like, okay. Whatever you say, I'm just going to follow your lead at this point. We go to the entrance, and Bouncer's like, no hats, sir. So, Uncle takes off the hat, stashes it away in his coat. We go inside, and it was like Nirvana had opened up before me. It was dark, there were colorful lights, lasers shooting everywhere, this big mirrored center stage with the poles, and there's women in all sorts of undressed or even fully naked, gyrating and dancing, just walking around carrying drinks. And to an 18-year-old who's had limited, we'll go with limited experience to girls at this point, it was just kind of like a sensory overload. Like, holy shit, this is amazing. So we go find a table near center stage, and because it's non-alcoholic, but part of the admittance is that you do have to buy a beer, so it's non-alcoholic beer. And while I could have drank it, it smelled skunky and awful, and so I just left it on the table. So Uncle's sitting there pounding down his drink. Now I imagine he's got a good enough of a buzz to carry him through not only where we're at, but the rest of the night. So the fact that it's not alcoholic probably isn't really doing anything. It's just like, okay, more of the flavor. And we're sitting there watching the girls dance around, and out comes the hat. Flips it open on top of the head. He's sitting there having a good time. And sure enough, the strippers are playing with it a little bit. They'll go by and like rub their fingers across the brim, or he's getting a little more attention than he would otherwise. Now, that lasts for a whole of 30 seconds until one of the large security guys comes over. He's like, "Sir, there's no hats." All right, takes the hat off, puts it on the table, and I shit you not even 30 seconds later, only until the bouncer walks away far enough, right back on his head, the hat comes, and bouncer turns around, looks at it, like, motherfucker, I just told this big white asshole, no hats. Comes back around, sir, you can't wear your hat in here. If you put it back on again, we're going to have to escort you out. Okay. Hat goes off. He says, Zach, don't put the fucking hat back on. This would be like getting into the gates of heaven only to be, kicked out because you're doing something essentially a little, not necessarily douchey, but you're just being a schmuck. So, thankfully the hat stays away for the rest of the night. And there were, I don't remember the exact sequence of the events leading up to it, but there were, girls coming to the table, dancing. At one point, my uncle goes away for a private dance. At this point, I get preyed upon by another stripper who's like, "Oh, you want to dance?" And I'm like, "Okay." I don't know how this stuff works at this point. So she leads me over to a little private booth and closes the curtain, and the song starts playing, and she's dancing and like climbing onto my lap and doing all the stripper things. At this point, I don't know if it was some type of white knight bullshit or morality kicks in, and I don't know how to talk to this person because I have very limited experience aside from like school and work interacting with actual people out in the world, and so I immediately jumped to well, do you like doing this? It's like, oh yeah, I'm just paying my way through school doing it, all the typical bullshit talk you hear from it, but I'm trying to make a connection with this stripper, and it's like, in hindsight, I was just being a dumbass. I should have just enjoyed it for what it was, because I'm never going to see this person after this night, and probably not even after the song ends. And so we're sitting there, and she's getting dressed again back in her bikini, and it's awkward for me. Like, I'm enjoying it, but up to this point, any interaction I had had with a naked girl, there was an emotional connection there. And this was just kind of, the wham bam, thank you, ma'am, get out, type of deal. And I didn't know how to respond with it until she's like, okay, that'll be $10. Like, oh, okay. And she was extremely lucky at that point that I had $10 on me, because much like I do, much like now, I never carried cash back then, and it was a thing of what I'm thinking to myself: what happened if I didn't have the $10? They probably would have had security just escort me to like an ATM to get the money. I was generally panicked a little bit, like, okay, that was my last $10 that I had on me. If somebody asked me for a dance, no, thank you. I'm very happy sitting right here, just enjoying the sights going around me. Although the private dance was kind of amazing, but no, thank you. I'm good. So I walked back to the table, and Uncle's sitting there already, and at this point he decides Christian needs another private dance, but this one it's not a private dance. So he flags over a stripper who is in essentially a pirate getup. I don't really remember a whole lot about the outfit, except it's like this striped bikini. She's got an eye patch going across her forehead, and she's got like a pirate cap on. And rather than take me away to a private booth, it's just done right there at the table. So my stool swings out, and there's a bunch of guys around me, kind of cheering and jeering. And this, in my mind, I know I'm remembering this incorrectly because it was of what happened. She's like an Amazonian. She's just this big, gigantic, hot woman dressed like a pirate who then starts dancing in front of me. And she's getting naked, gyrating, doing the whole bit. And in this particular instance, she's rubbing up against me and exposing all the different parts of her body to me, and like getting it really close to my face, which is all great, except for the fact that her snatch smells like rancid tuna. So she is becoming more and more aggressive throughout the dance, pushing me around a little bit, tugging on my shirt, until it reaches the point that she lifts her leg up and then plants it up over my shoulder, so that the heel of her shoe is like kind of digging into my shoulder, and she is gyrating her hips, and I'm getting whiffs of this rancid pussy. It's coming at me like a ferocious attack dog, and she is running her hand through the back of on the back of my head through my hair, and like grabbing it and pulling it, and it's not like a playful tug. It fucking hurts at this point, but peer pressure. I've got a naked woman dancing in front of me. My uncle is having a good time. There's I don't know how many guys behind me, cheering me on and whatnot, and it gets to the point that we're like, I'm not having a good time with this, but I have to keep going with it. And before I fully comprehend what's going to happen, she grabs the back of my head as hard as she can, shoves my face into her smelly snatch, and just starts rubbing. Everyone around me erupts, like thinking it's the best thing ever, but they don't realize the funk that is coming off of this woman. And at the time, I had a little shitty, soul patch, half goatee thing going on, and it's soaking this up, and it's on my nose, and I'm not having a good time. I want to go home. This is all a mistake. Why did I want to go to a strip club? And the dance is over. I don't remember what happened after that, just that we're leaving, we're going home, I'm happy, I'm trying to scrub my face off with like those wet wipes. And we get back to my uncle's place, and like, I'm done. I that was a mistake on my part. Should have never gone to a strip club. I fall asleep on the couch. My uncle's in bed. 3 a.m. rolls around. I get woken up by the sound of like a shuffling, and I see my uncle roll out of the bed, drag himself into the bathroom, and then proceed to just throw up just violently. So the night finally caught up with him. I had already been scarred, and that's why I don't like strip clubs. So, jarring transitions aside, today's episode it jumps around a lot because again, I want to talk about things that recently have happened, and the only recent things I've had were playing Portal, and then being not necessarily reintroduced, but having more recent experience with network security, primarily configuring your wireless router and getting all that set up. The stripper tale, as far as why Christian is never ever going back to a strip club, is just I need to work on my storytelling. I need to get better at actually speaking and working through start, middle, end, and making it engaging. So it's as much for my benefit as it is for yours. Now, because we are going to move from strippers to network security, yay! I understand if you drop off at this point, but it's not so much the hows of the network security as far as why security overall is very important when it comes to computers, tablets, smartphones. Essentially, if you're getting connected to the internet, you want to make sure your shit is locked down. Now, I do it to the point of, I used to do this for a living, where it was, configuring the computer, the user accounts, administrative rights, the router itself, how everything would communicate, firewalls, and setting up parental controls, the whole kit and caboodle. And you throw in an extra layer of my just natural paranoia, it seems excessive and silly to other people. Primarily, most recent experience was my lady friend, where her router wasn't necessarily doing the trick, and we had acquired another one, so it was a matter of getting that configured. Now, part of this was of who she lives with. There are other people that can access the network, so it's a thing of, well, let's get you on your own separate network. You don't have to worry about people getting into your stuff. And the immediate question that always pops up is, when you're talking to anybody about security, is why should I do this? Who's going to try and get into my stuff? And it's not a matter of who, because people think on the level of personal, like, oh, did that guy cut off on 94 is he going to follow me home and then sit at the curb, hack into my network, and get at my shit? And that's not how it works. Like, there's never anything personal about these attacks. It's usually a thing of brute forcing and getting people at large, because you don't know necessarily what your victim might have, but you're going to find out and you're going to take what you can get. And so that's why things like, the phishing email works, or brute force attacks on networks occur, because once you're in, the hard part's done. Now you can see pretty much everything. You can get the banking information, you can get the credit card numbers, and then just go to town. And so when you stop thinking on that personal level as far as who might attack me, and start thinking, well, everyone could attack me, and protecting yourself against that's when you can start really understanding the importance of network security. Because I can tell you firsthand, I don't know anybody personally, or at least they haven't admitted to me, or I haven't caught them, that is trying to get access to my information. But I can tell you, looking at like my online accounts like Steam Origin, my Microsoft account's a big one. There are fuckers all over the world constantly trying to get into my accounts to get whatever they can from it. Now, it might be a simple thing as of, we're going to go ahead and crack this guy's email password, get into his email, and then we're going to start sending out the spam messages, trying to grab other people. Now, this could be to do things like steal banking information. It could be to create a botnet so they can do other things. Very rarely is it a targeted attack that they're trying to get, like the naked photos you keep on your computer. Usually you're the means to an end, or just a piece of a larger puzzle here. So being able to protect yourself against that is absolutely critical. Things like with passwords. Passwords are the great starting point, where they say, make it where the password isn't easy to guess. But there's two different sides to that coin, where you don't want to use a common phrase or something unique or identifying about you as part of the password, because somebody might say, like, oh, well, Jason likes his dog Sparky, so he has Sparky as the password. Boom, we're in. Those are the type of things with like your security answers as well, where if it's easy to guess about you, you don't want to use it as part of a lock and key system. So that's part one, making sure that your password can't be actually guessed by another person who might try to get into it, because nobody is 100% likable. There were people that hated Mother Teresa, folks that definitely hated Gandhi, and if they lived in a technological age, they would have definitely been trying to get into their accounts for personal reasons, just to screw that person over. So that's part one. Make sure your password isn't easily guessable by an actual human. But again, everyday folk are rarely targeted for personal attacks like that. So the other side is make sure that your password isn't easily guessable by a machine. Now, the concept behind this is, think of your password like a needle in a haystack, because when a machine tries to guess your password, it's not guessing personal information about you. It's going to employ what's called a brute force attack. Now, the brute force attack is the machine running guesses at it thousands of times a second, and over and over and over again. It will keep hammering the account with these guesses. Now, eventually it will find the needle. The trick is to make the haystack as big as possible. So effectively, it makes the brute force attack pointless, because it would take way too much time for it to actually crack the password and get in. And that's where things like password complexity and length come into play, where I know it can be a bitch to remember a password with lowercase letter, uppercase letter, number, and special characters like exclamation points, periods, pound sign. It can make it hard. And then you add on the length, where you want a minimum of at least 8 characters. The more the better, because the way it works is when the program is trying to effectively guess your password, it has to take into account all those variables. So say you have, we're going to do some quick math here. You have an 8-character password that's lower. Let's back it up here. Say you have a 4-character password that's all lowercase. So that is 26 letters per digit, or per character. So we would go, 26 times 26 times 26 times 26, essentially 26 to the 4th power. It would have to guess at least, at most 456,000 times, 456,976 times. Assuming your password is the last one that it guessed. Now, if we're going at thousands of times a second, or we have multiple instances running the same attack, it gets done very quickly. Whereas then, if we just change one letter to a capital letter, it exponentially increases the number of guesses it has to make. Now, say we throw in a number and a special character, and we double the length, you can see how that number goes up. And instead of it taking, hours, days, or maybe even a week to crack the password, it starts taking months, years, hundreds, thousands of years before that program would be able to crack that password. Now, processors are getting faster. Instances like this go much quicker, and it doesn't take as much time to do it. That's why making the haystack as big as possible is so critically important. Now, that's where the next argument usually comes in, as far as, well, I can't remember. If I can remember a big complex password like that, I'm just going to use it for everything. And you can't do that, because if you use the same password for everything, again, when somebody gets into your system or cracks a password for one of your accounts, they're going to start going after your other accounts under that belief that you're too lazy and you've used that same password for multiple things. And then if you have, boom, they're instantly into everything else. And so you run into the instance of, well, I need a big, long, complex password for one account, my second account, and since everything's done online nowadays, you've got your electric bill, your cable bill, your bank account, your email, your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, YouTube, your Netflix account. Everything is online nowadays, and those passwords quickly add up. And I understand it can be a bitch to remember the passwords, but we have tools to help us do things like this, where it makes it a lot easier. I personally use a program called LastPass, which securely stores all of my passwords for all of my online accounts. And the beauty is, I don't even have to create these passwords to set up the accounts. It will go ahead and create passwords for me. It will also run a security audit for all the accounts I have entered, and say when you're initially setting up the account, if you did go ahead and use the same password across a dozen different accounts, it'll see that and then walk you through the process of changing the passwords for each of them. It makes it super brain dead easy to do. It's free to use on PC and Mac, and for I think it's like $12 a year, you get access to excuse me, the mobile application as well. So you can use it on your phone, your tablet, and you only effectively at that point have to remember one password, which is the master password, to get you into LastPass. Because LastPass, aside from managing your passwords and allowing you to change them to more secure ones, it has an autofill feature where you go to a site, you have the LastPass plugin enabled in your browser, or you're using it on mobile, it will pop up and say, would you like to enter the account information? You do, you sign in, you're done. It's a two button click process. And so it literally doesn't get any easier. Now, the initial setup can be painful because depending on how many accounts you have, like myself, I probably have close to 100 or more different online accounts. Going through and getting it all set up and then doing the security audit, making sure you're totally secure, can be a pain in the ass. But it is so worth it because the passwords are long. You can change the complexity of the password, the length of the password, because some sites don't necessarily follow the same security practices as others, but you have total control over that. And then if you get a mobile device like a tablet or phone that has a fingerprint reader, hell, you can even get them for your PC now. You can sign into LastPass with that. So you don't have to keep typing in that complex master password over and over again. Just boop, in with the fingerprint, you're done. You authorize it, and you're all set. Now, passwords are a great frontline defense using something like LastPass, and going over everything we talked about already is super critical. It's a great first step, but more often than not, it's not enough. Because heaven forbid somebody does go ahead and finds the needle in your haystack, they will immediately have access to the account unless you've done something along the lines of two-factor authentication. With two-factor authentication, you're effectively making it a two-key system to get into any of your accounts, and you can set it from anywhere, or like anytime you sign in, or if you're signing in from an unrecognized device. And this step here is what has saved me a lot from folks trying to get into my accounts, where if I do see that someone has gone and cracked my password, the two-factor authentication is what will stop them, because I then will there's a couple different ways of setting it up where, depending on the site, you can use an authenticator app, which LastPass also provides, or you can get one through the iOS iTunes Store or Google Play Store, generic ones. What they do is they will create unique 6-digit codes every 30 seconds. And so it's essentially a security challenge, where if you sign in with the valid credentials, it'll say, okay, give us the code that's now displayed on your authenticator device to confirm it's really you. Now, the authenticator device, you get set up on one device. Like myself, I keep it on my phone. Just whatever you have with you. And most people keep it on their phone, have their phone with them at all times, so it makes sense to put it there. So without having access to your phone, which should be secured with at the very least a PIN code, people can't get access to your online accounts. Now, there are other ways of doing it where you can do an offline hard copy. You'll have pre-generated codes that you can write down or print off, and then don't lose those codes because you're going to have a very hard time getting back without them. Or you can set up text authorization. I know iTunes is a big fan of this, where once the two-step authentication is configured, they will go ahead and text you that 6-digit code to confirm your identity. So not only is it the two-factor, but it's also tied to that unique phone number. So it's secure. You don't have to worry about it. And again, I'll attest to first-hand experience. Having these measures in place is what's going to protect you most. That's the biggest step, because I've noticed more often than not people don't worry about the other steps that are necessary. Things like buying a router competent of decent security protocols, at the very basic, disabling open networks, making sure it's a complex password, because again, we don't want to have things brute forced. And aside from having the password on the network itself, but also enable the administrator password, so if somebody does get connected to the network, they can't make changes, kick you off, get access to other things, and so on and so forth. So I know, I mean, people have told me firsthand that I'm paranoid, I worry about it too much, but that paranoia gives me the peace of mind to know that when I do go look at logs for, my router or my online accounts, and I see that people from the other side of the world are trying to get into my stuff, I've taken those necessary steps. And I think that's what it is. People just aren't faced with that reality that these things are happening. Just because you don't see the attacks doesn't mean that people aren't trying to get access to it. Like, I have emails from people that I've lost contact with where their email account's just been compromised, and it's a spam bot hitting my account over and over again. Do I tell them? Sometimes. Depends how much I like the person. But these are basic steps in security that you need to do. Passwords, LastPass, two-factor authentication. These are just the beginning steps. As the show goes on, I might cover other things, because again, this is what I did for a living at one point in my life, and having to talk to the general public about it is painful in a one-on-one setting, because you get these questions and you can tell people, and I know a lot of you, if not all of you, will just ignore what I've said here, but I can't stress enough how important it is. It seems like paranoid rambling, but it's critical, because everything we do is online nowadays, and if you're not protected there, then you get really fucked up. So that's going to conclude this episode. We'll be back next Thursday. Again, I record Zero Lives around 9 a.m. Central Time. Once that's done, then I go ahead and jump right onto this. So the upload should be available again on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Google Play. If you have any other services you want to see it on, definitely drop me an email. I hit all the ones that I thought were biggest, and I can't think of any others off the top of my head. Otherwise, subscribe, download, leave reviews if you're so inclined. And if you want to write the show with questions, about anything, it's the unwashedasses@gmail.com. The unwashedasses@gmail.com. Be more than happy to talk about anything. Beyond that, just the obligatory pimping here. Check out Zero Lives, recorded again every Thursday, 9 a.m. That goes up on a YouTube feed later. And then we have Friday Night Smite with Sapper Woody and Mezzafesto, Fridays from 9 p.m. Central Time till midnight. And then we have the Emily Says Boo on Monday mornings. It's a weekly comic I'm doing. Just all types of stuff. Head over to 0and09.com and check out everything I'm doing there. And then if you feel like supporting any of it, if there's like one piece that sticks out to you, great, I've done my job. Please consider supporting over at patreon.com/0and09. Until then, we'll see you.
I can feel the end, it's drawing near. It will soon be here. Oh, that much is clear. So shut the doors and turn off the lights. Let us sleep tonight. Let us huddle in the dark. Oh, my lover, you are beautiful, but that beauty comes at such a price. And I know that you'll soon disappear, like the dark and the night.